Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining during what has been, each day feels like a year lately. So I appreciate you taking the time. I hope the next 30-45 minutes we spend together talking through this topic will be very useful and very applicable and practical for you in the coming days and weeks and months. What we're talking about today is how to be an effective spokesperson for your organization, for the issues you work on. But I would also encourage y'all, especially those that work with a lot of community organizers, work to bring the voices of people in the community to the forefront and help them be effective spokespeople. I would encourage you to listen also with an ear on how you could help them get up to speed on these tips and tricks for being an effective spokesperson. And we will make sure to share both this recording and the deck with everybody so you can, go forth and use it for your own. We can take off logos and let you use it for your own training purposes. But so we can think of this as both a training session, or as a workshop, but also a train the trainer session if you'd like, if helpful. There is a pretty small group today, which is actually really great for sessions like this if folks have questions and comments. So please, at any time, just don't wait for me. I'll be going along. So feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in with questions, comments, experiences that would be helpful for the group to hear. So I'm going to go ahead and go forward. So what we're going to cover today, really think of it in 3 parts. First, we're going to just do a quick refresher on key messages, what they are and what they are not. Spokespeople are only as good as the messages that they can deliver. The opportunities, the best opportunities not only don't get you anywhere, but could actually end up hurting you if you're not ready with those messages you want to deliver, right? We are all, we're not selling products. We're trying to communicate ideas. We're trying to move hearts and minds. And the way we do that is with our words, with the messaging we use. So we have to make sure we have that really buttoned up. So we're going to talk through that quickly. That is that's the foundation of any of these good spokesperson opportunities. That's what you need. We're going to talk a little bit, especially in spokesperson opportunities, about messages versus message supports. How to riff on your key messages, how to not sound kind of robotic and static and boring, how to make sure you're always coming back to those key ideas in different ways. Those incredibly important for an effective spokesperson to keep folks engaged. And then finally, we're going to talk through some of the most common, what we call pitfalls, spokesperson pitfalls, things to watch out for, and how to make sure that you avoid them, how to overcome those barriers. So with no further ado, I'll move into the key messages. So we've, Beth and we've done a few sessions with y'all, but we've done a few of these workshops, but also individual conversations about the importance, what a key message is and what they aren't. So we're trying to practice what we preach, that, one of the best practices of good communications is repetition. So we're gonna review this real quick. But just a reminder that a good message is not what you see here, right? It's not just a slogan. It's not a script where you have to remember where every comma goes. It's not just the tagline. And it's certainly not, I hear from a lot of folks, like this idea of dumbing down the ideas, right? What a good message should do, right? It needs to represent your values. Where are you coming from? But remember, you're not giving these messages in a vacuum. You're trying to engage with different audiences that are coming to you with different values, different barriers, different concerns. We're trying to meet folks where they are. So we really need to make sure that we're connecting our vision and values to those of our audiences, right? That one is incredibly key. And of course, we've talked a bunch with y'all about the idea of making sure, we don't mean, again, not dumbing down. I think that's a very negative frame, but like using clear, compelling, simple language where people understand exactly what we're talking about. Especially important when we're talking about children and families and communities that need support. If we just go into, the wonky speak of the policies, we're kind of losing all that emotional heft. Of course, being factual and credible being compelling, having that urgency. My goodness, now more than ever, people can appreciate that. So we want to make sure that we have all those things. And I said this before, I want to say it again. Remember, you know, different audiences can have different values and barriers. So one message does not fit all. We can have, you know, we need to meet different audiences where they are. And effective spokespeople, effective messages are all about saying, what do the, you know, always standing true to our own values, but, you know, turning up the volume on different aspects of the issue based on what folks care about, you know, whether it's budgetary issues, whether it's, you know, the needs of families, you know, depending on what folks care about, these messages sound very different. And we as effective spokespeople need to be able to be nimble and flexible to those different audiences. And as a quick refresher, we did key messages before, but just as a reminder, most effective messages whenever you're going out there for an opportunity, you know, but this holds true for all messaging, you know, email alerts, you know, videos, you name it. There is never more than 4 key ideas you're trying to get across at a given time. A value message, again, like we said, the message that gets folks to start nodding their heads. Yes, I'm with you. I agree with that thing you're saying. A barrier message. This is where we overcome their best reason to say no, right? When they say, yeah, but, you know, how do we get past that barrier without reinforcing it? And as we've talked about, the secret there is we don't repeat the barrier. We say, I know you think we don't have enough, you know, budget to cover other needs, much less healthcare, but, right, we dig right into here's how we're going to make ends meet. So a value message, a barrier message, the ask, always, if nothing else, right, we always need to make sure what is the timely, specific thing we are asking an audience to do. And this is really key, and folks forget it a lot, but it reinforces those values. The vision message says, so what? Like, if you do this thing we're asking you to do, here's why you'll be happy. Here's why the world will look more the way you want it, hope it will look. And again, for spokesperson opportunities where you're being interviewed, you're giving a, you know, you're sharing your ideas, there will be opportunities to kind of navigate these 4 message points. This is not linear. You can start at any place. You could start at the ask and then skip back to the value message, you know. For my goodness, in tweets, you know, and posts, we're not necessarily being able to hit on all of these. The idea is this is kind of your lighthouse messaging. This is your guiding messaging that no matter what opportunity comes, you're sticking to these in whatever way you can with whatever time you have. So with that as a baseline for, you know, these are the key ideas and the way I need to, you know, communicate about my issue, about the need for more funding for childcare in our states and at the national level. Let's dig into some media. We're calling this Media 201 because based on some of our conversations with folks, most people have a baseline, if not quite a bit of experience working with the media. So for some, this is a bit of a refresher, jumping past some of the most basics. And for others, hopefully this is really useful information maybe you hadn't heard before, but we'll take with you and share with others. And I do want to flag what we're going to be talking through based on folks' interest. This is media heavy. We're going to be looking at this through the lens of media interviews, media engagement, right? But just remember that the skills, the tips that we're sharing, these hold true for most, if not all, of the different kinds of spokesperson opportunities you or your members, your supporters, your volunteers, those folks out in community, places where there's an opportunity to be a spokesperson. We're just focusing on the media specifically today. So I want to take a moment before we dig in just to say this out loud, because I think we all, especially in the race, my goodness, like I said, every day can feel like a month or a year lately, but in the race to get our messaging out there, sometimes it seems like folks kind of see the media in kind of a position of power or in a place where all media is good media and we have to jump at every opportunity. And of course, when they call, we have to answer and you know, we're here to say that is not true. for any spokesperson opportunity, media or otherwise, you always want to be asking yourself as an organization, as a leader, right? First things first, does this opportunity put me in front of my target audiences? When we've done the hard work of figuring out exactly who we need to get in front of, does this opportunity do that? And I think it's really helpful for folks to see, for the most part, to see the media not as an audience, but as a vehicle. I'm going to say that again. Like, it's really important for the most part to see the media, reporters, print, online, radio, whatever, right, to TV, to see them as a vehicle to whoever is listening, watching, reading, right? They are a conduit for you. So if that particular reporter, say works for a paper where that like, oh, well, that, the folks on the, in the State House, that's the first paper they read every morning, or, that publication or that online blog, they really have the ears of parents in my community, whatever, right? But I do that little bit of homework to say, is this worth our time? Does this get us in front of who we need to be talking to? Who needs to be hearing our messages, right? And then the second question is, does it give me a chance to share those key messages, right? Are we talking about the issue? Are we actually talking about what I want to be talking about? Not will I be able to like shoehorn it in, but like, is this actually on the issue? Are they, maybe not friendly, maybe not, easy interview, but are they open enough, that this will be a useful, engaging opportunity? So those, for any opportunity, spokesperson opportunity, we always say, start with strategy, ask yourself these two questions. And then once you actually have an opportunity coming, what we always encourage folks to think through is this idea of, okay, you've got your key messages, how you want to, get folks nodding their heads, how to overcome barriers they might have, of course, what the key ask is, but I think we've all seen folks on maybe the Sunday morning, national talk shows where they have their key messages and they never deviate from them. And they sound a little robotic, right? It doesn't feel authentic. It feels very, it almost feels like they, it feels, like they're hiding something, or they are not comfortable actually talking about the issue. And that's the last thing that we want to look like. So there's three kinds of what we call message supports that I want to talk with you through. The message is one thing. Message supports are ways of, expanding upon, highlighting, digging deeper into those messages with examples. So we're going to talk about social math, sound bites, and storytelling. It's nice that these are, what's the word, alliterative. So we'll dig in first to this idea of social math. Social math simply just means statistics with context. There's been depending on who we've been working with the grantees and at the national level, there's a lot of data flying around. How many centers have closed? How much money is needed to keep centers open, in one state, across the country? How much has been lost? How much could be lost? The problem is if we start getting awash in data without context, we start losing the urgency and the like, what are we talking about again? And why does this matter? And is that a big number? It kind of loses the emotional urgent heft that we need to get folks to stand up, to take notice, to take action. So an example that we like to share with folks, just as to help you see the point, is, if I said to you, completely made up, don't actually know these numbers, but if I said to you, did you know there are, 6,742 gun stores in California? Don't you think that's too much? For some it'd be like, wow, that sounds like a big number, but I don't know. California's, well, isn't it one of our biggest states? Isn't it the biggest state? I mean, that's a lot of land. I mean, I don't know. You can see how somebody can kind of just start going off like, well, I don't know. I'm not really sure what that number means. Social math means saying to folks, did you know there's more gun stores in California than McDonald's? And suddenly folks have a visual of driving through maybe their town, maybe their city, maybe California, and seeing a McDonald's on almost every corner, And it really helps them go, shoot, that might be too many gun stores. See, so it's that idea of just helping visualize data. Another one that a group I worked with on Medicaid expansion like to use, they were in community and they were trying to talk about the number of folks that needed health care. And just doing raw numbers wasn't really doing it for them. And we came up with the this kind of idea of social math of saying, if on your street there's 10 houses, did you know in 5 of those houses, 5 of those families have no health care, right? And suddenly, instead of throwing out giant numbers where it kind of takes the people out of it and the struggle, the suffering out of it, people are seeing their streets, their houses, their neighbors. It becomes much more real and urgent to folks. Any questions on social or comments on social math before we move on to some of the other message supports that are really effective for good spokespeople? Okay, I'm going to take 1 second. All right. So the next message support I wanted to share with you are sound bites. Sound bites are a way of taking, you work so hard on getting your messaging exactly right. Like if you're doing it right, you're working very hard on appreciating where your audiences are coming from, matching your values to theirs, getting it just right so it's compelling and timely. And a soundbite is even harder, but when done right, it's kind of, it's incredibly effective. It's distilling down that core idea into just, a few words. I think, 30 years ago, the Center for Media something, I forget the official title at Harvard, but they were like, 30 years ago, the average soundbite on the nightly news was 21 seconds. It was like, 15, 16 words. That is a very small amount of real estate. And that was 30 years ago, right? So if you think yourself of, the video clips you see as you're scrolling along social media, what you might see on the news channel of your choice, the one quote that gets put in the paper if you get interviewed, you can see why it's so crucial to really whittle it down to the most important idea. I wanted to show you an example of one. Hopefully everybody can hear the audio from my computer. This is Mayor Pete Buttigieg when he was running for president. Gosh, I was gonna say it feels I guess it was earlier this year. Or maybe it was late last year at this point, I'm not sure. But it was, he is from Indiana, and he was directly addressing differences in opinion when it comes to religion and his views versus Mike Pence, because as most people, him, he's gay, and he was saying, like, here's how I wish Mike Pence would see would see this issue. You press play.
And that's the thing I wish the Mike Pences of the world would understand. If you got a problem with who I am, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my creator.
So, and I can't see folks' screens or faces, but I just want to make sure whether did folks, maybe you can type in or let me know. Did you all hear that? Or just give me a nod? Okay, good, yep. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Thank you all. So I forget, I counted it before. It's definitely less. If your quarrel is not with me, your quarrel, sir, is with my creator. It's 13 words, I think. Incredibly powerful. And at the time, let me X out so I can see that. And at the time, in every paper, in every headline, right? This got a lot of play. So you can see why it's not easy to get down to, and I can guarantee you people were sitting around the table brainstorming for hours, right? To get that just right. And you all have probably done this exercise. It's not easy, but when done right, you get so much mileage out of it. So both on the social math and on these ideas of sound bites, I really encourage you, if you might already have some that you want to play with, it might be time to try some new ones out. These are the game changers when it comes to messaging. These are the things that help people, reporters, but more importantly, the folks that are, reading, listening, to stop and take note. These are the things that stick with folks. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, any questions or comments on this idea of the sound bite? Okay. Move on. And the last of the three, right? Social math, sound bites, storytelling. I mean, this whole project is about storytelling, so I feel like I don't need to belabor this point too much, other than to remind us all that we humans are hardwired to learn through stories, right? That is how we teach lessons to children. That is how, when we're learning about an issue, we remember the struggle of the person, not the organization, not the policy, right? It's about people. And that is how we connect to one another. That is ultimately how we would all argue is one of the most powerful tools in all of the communications toolbox. One of my, it's heartbreaking, but one of the most effective examples I've seen is an organization I work for called Kaboom that builds playgrounds, particularly in underserved neighborhoods for kids. The story, there's different types of stories organizations tell. One of them, we can do a whole, I think Beth did one a few months ago about the types of stories, but the story of how Kaboom came to be, right, was that the founder, he lived in DC, this was 20 something years ago, and he read a story in the Washington Post about two kids, two little ones, a 6-year-old and her 4-year-old little brother, who were outside alone looking for a place to play, got locked in a hot car on a summer day and ended up dying. And he said, that is a tragedy. No child, all children deserve safe places to play in their communities, right? And I've worked for this organization for years, and I always remember that story in the back of my head as why they do what they do, right? What the problem is we're trying to fix. And I just shared that story with you in, 30 seconds. And my guess is when we all wrap today and we go on, that story will stay with you. If the things that you remember that we heard today, that'll be one of the things that you remember most. So I think that's a really great example of why this whole project is all about the stories, right? They share what we're trying to convey better than any data and any just laundry list of reasons can. So again, just reminding you, stories need to be effective. Stories need to be strategic. And what I mean by that is always say, what are we trying to achieve? Therefore, who do we need to reach? What do they care about? What are their barriers? And then say, okay, given that, what are the stories that I can tell to help them, see what to help move them where we need to move, to highlight that idea, that problem, that opportunity, whatever it need be. So those are the three ideas of message supports. Again, social math, sound bites, and stories. Any questions or comments on those before we dig into the second half of today, which is really all about these ideas of spokesperson pitfalls and how to avoid them? Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. So the most common pitfall that we see that, when we're working with folks, and, we're talking about media particularly, but this, again, anytime that there's kind of a question and answer opportunity, but especially with media, the most common pitfall we see is that, again, there's this weird power dynamic for some folks where they see media as, well, they asked me a question, I must answer, right? Or, oh, they actually reached out to us. This is a great opportunity. I have to answer. Or just, I'm a polite person. When asked a question, I answer. Or I'm really smart on this issue. So when asked any question, I'm ready to answer. And the thing is, being an effective spokesperson isn't about answering any question that the media gives you. being an effective spokesperson is about getting out your key messages, right? So the idea is, you know, sometimes you will get those straight up questions that ask you, what are we here today to talk about? You know, what is the challenge at hand? You know, and you're off to the races. But too often, and we're going to dig into a lot of these, that doesn't happen. You're getting either questions that are off topic, that are oddball, you know, that are aggressive, and how do you contend with those? And again, I want to make sure folks here, your job is not to just answer the questions. Your job is to get out your key messages. That's how we are in service to our issues and our organizations, right? I want to share with you a great example of how, you know, we call this blocking and bridging. You get an unhelpful, a weird, a crazy, you name it, you know, you get a tough question. How do you navigate back to your key messages? This is from a few years ago. Now this is, her name is, oh my goodness, I think it's Anne Hathaway. And she was, she had been in, she was a, one of the stars of the movie version of Les Miserables, the musical. And she was going around doing press for the movie, and she had stepped out of the car, and a paparazzi had taken an indecent photo of her stepping out in a short dress. And then she had to go on the Today Show and field questions, which she had wanted to be about the movie, but now people are talking about the picture. And of all people, which, you know, in hindsight lets us know just how gross this is, but this is Matt Lauer interviewing her. But I want to show you how she does her blocking and bridging, and then we'll break it down. So let me get this started for you.
Hathaway, good morning. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Matt.
Seen a lot of you lately.
Sorry about that.
You were.
I'd be happy to stay home, but the film.
Let's just get it out of the way. You had a little wardrobe malfunction the other night. What's the lesson learned from something like that, other than that you keep smiling, which you always do?
Well, it was obviously an unfortunate incident.
Yeah.
I think it kind of made me sad on two accounts. One was that I was very sad that we live in an age when someone takes a picture of another person in a vulnerable moment, and rather than delete it and do the decent thing, sells it. And I'm sorry that we live in a culture that commodifies sexuality of unwilling participants, which brings us back to Les Mis, because that's what my character is. She is someone who is forced to sell sex to benefit her child because she has nothing and there's no social safety net. And so let's get back to Les Mis.
One of the most creative turns of a question I have ever heard, and I'm going to take it at that. That's fine.
Okay, so grossness aside, the Matt Lauer grossness aside, it's just an artful example of what we're talking about, right? Where she says, you know, she answers the question. She says, yeah, it was unfortunate, and it makes me sad because we're living in a culture where we're commodifying women's unwilling, how does she say it? You know, women in the sexuality of unwilling participants, which brings us back to Les Mis. So let's focus on that, right? So this is literally, it's a formula, right? It's blocking and bridging. It's the question plus one, right? You can't completely, you know, for the most part, I'm going to say you can't completely ignore it, or you look evasive, you look uncomfortable, you look like you're unwilling. So you take it, but then you say, but then you do this bridge back to your key message. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Think of the things you've seen in debates. If you do a lot of speaking and maybe debate, you know, most of us that do that have the ones that make us really comfortable in different situations. Find what works for you, right? The key thing to remember here is, you know, I don't actually know about that. Here's what I do know, right? What's really important to remember is, right, the real question we should be asking is, you know, and I'm going to share all these with you so you all can have them for yourselves and to share with others. But, right, the idea is answer, bridge, get back to key message, right? Find the ones that work for you in different situations. And we're going to dig into what all those different situations are going to be where you would want to do this blocking and bridging. For example, all right, so before we do that, I want to say, so, okay, media opportunities are coming. A specific one, you know, somebody has asked whether, you know, it's either, you know, these are coming or you have time to prepare for an actual interview, right? first things first, this should go without saying, but I'm often surprised how much it doesn't happen, but it's anticipate the questions you will be asked, right? The easy ones, and especially the hard ones. Like, this is not the time for, what is it, the ostrich in the sand moment. It's not like if you pretend that that question doesn't exist, you will absolutely receive it, right? So take the time for the folks that you are going to put out there, right? To think through what those questions are, think through what the best answers for them are, and practice them, right? And again, especially the hard ones. You know, the way to not feel that anxiety is to feel prepared, right? In so many life situations, that's a advice I'm still working on. But the more you practice, the more you're prepared, the more effective you'll be. So first things first, anticipate those questions. For the questions you don't know the answer to, again, I think this is a place where, whether it's out of wanting to be polite, or feeling like the deer in headlights moment of, well, they asked, I've got to answer, right? Folks tend to just kind of wing it. Please don't. The problem is, at worst, you're off base. I mean, at best you're off base, and at worst it can really cause a problem for the issue, make you end up making you or the spokesperson lose some credibility. So this is where, if you go back to those bridges, right, this is where the ones like, that's not my area of expertise, but what I can tell you is, or, I don't know about that, but, right? And if it's just an interview, a more informal setting, and you want to, kind of give an olive branch to the reporter, or, you have a relationship, or you want to build one, feel free to say, that is not my area. I'm happy to, put you in touch with folks that I think know more about that than I do, if you want to, if you know those folks, and if it's something that would be helpful for your issue, right? Again, no conjecture, please. Again, this is a riff on the same thing. So what do you think is going to happen in the election? Do you think we're going to get the funding? Do you think, unless you have a crystal ball, in which case please share, this is tough, right? Because then you're on the record with your guests. And again, it comes back to the credibility, and it can hurt your credibility. Others can use it against you if you do have some opposition. So this is a time where it's good to say, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I hope to see is, right? We're hopeful that, just be careful on actually kind of prognosticating the future, and having that kind of live in perpetuity in different forms of media. This is key, and I think this is an important one for us all to remember, but especially for folks if they have agreed, if they are not part of our organizations, but they're speaking on behalf of the issue. The challenge is, I don't know if it's happened to you all, or if it's happened to folks but if you're speaking on behalf of an issue for an organization, you are that organization, right? Like, even if it's not true, the perception is that, and even the paper might say, Lisa Faulkner of National Women's Law Center. And I'm like, oh, no, I was just saying my personal opinion. And they're like, well, you're from there. So, the two are one, right? So I think it's just remembering that, like, there are no personal opinions in media interviews, right? This kind of quick sidebar, right? This idea of you are always on the record, even before the conversation, quote unquote, begins. It's this idea of just remembering that as soon as you walk in the door, pick up the phone, begin the conversation, what you say could be included in the story. So just be very mindful of that, right? Third-party questions mean, so what does so-and-so think about this? This is oftentimes where they ask you about the opposition, the other side, the folks that disagree with you. This is a strategy call, right? If you want to take that, if that's an opportunity for you to say what's wrong with the other side, why they're wrong, if you feel really strong about that, go for it. If you'd rather not, again, not because you're uncomfortable with it, because if there's a strategic reason, do, if you're ready. But if it's because you'd rather not play that game, I can't tell you what they say, I'm not an expert on their point of view, but here's what I know, here's what we know, here's what we believe. Again, that's not a don't, that's just a choose based on strategy, right? Not based on stress. Be prepared for those kinds of questions. And this is something I'm sure we've all seen, whether it's in debates, whether it's in tough interviews. Good reporters are very good at the repeated question, right? Asking you the same thing 4 different ways. If they think you're being evasive, if they're not getting the answer they want, you know, there's a number of reasons. And the worst thing we can do is get flustered, get frustrated, you know, get off our key messages. This is one of the best times to employ those message supports we talked about earlier. So instead of literally saying the same sentence 5 times in a row, I should find some recent examples that I've seen on television and show those here. But this would be a great time to say, let me put this another way, and then talk about a social math example, or well, let me give you an example of, and then you're telling a story, right? These are ways for you to be saying the same thing without literally saying the same words over and over again and getting, whether it's the reporter or the viewers, frustrated, or you know, kind of losing some of your own credibility. And certainly not last, last but certainly not least, I mean, this idea of, if this is an on-camera interview, we can send you a whole separate tip sheet on body language, on what to do for on-camera interviews, everything from what to be wearing to how to be presenting yourself. And in fact, we're talking with the folks at the center about, it might be useful. We do a lot of small group on-camera practice for folks, because it's one thing for us to tell you how it's helpful to sit and how it's helpful to look engaged, but not, you know, not too low energy, not too high energy, what to wear. It's another thing to really practice it and to see yourself. So be on the lookout for those that are interested. We'd love to do some small virtual, we used to do these in person, but we'll figure it out. Some virtual practice sessions of recording folks, playing it back for you so you can see like what's working, what's not. It is a very, for most, it is not a comfortable experience, but for every person I've ever done actual on-camera practice with says it is the single most useful thing that helped them up their game when it came to these interviews. Not, you know, again, it's not the ostrich in the sand moment. Meet it head on, see what you're struggling with. It's a game changer if you can kind of get over yourself, see it as a thing you need to do in service to your issue, and the more practice, the better. And then I do want to flag, this is something, it's funny, I listen to a lot of NPR and I hear this a lot on NPR, and I hear people flub this a lot, which is too bad because they should expect it. But it's this idea of, we only have a few seconds left. Is there one other thing you wanted to make sure to get, you know, you wanted to share, that you wanted to say? Is there one more thing you want our listeners to hear, right? This is such a gift, right? But we need to be ready to like hit it in the 10, the 20 seconds, whatever we have. Often this is the place where you go back to your ask, right? What are we asking folks to do and why? Why this matters so much. So the ask and the vision are like the default here. I would highly recommend practicing those in very short, very effective sound bites. I just want to make sure nobody had a question or comment. I thought I saw a hand. Any questions or comments on those pitfalls and how to avoid them that we just walked through? Questions or comments? Things that we didn't cover that you're kind of still wondering about? Okay. All right. Well, in that case, my one last thing to you all is, above all, practice, practice, practice. That means make sure, first things first, that you have your key messages down, that for a given opportunity for you or for someone that you're training, we're prepared. We know what questions we could be asked. We are comfortable with our blocking and bridging phrases when those opportunities arise, right? And I do want to let folks know, again, homework is like a silly word for it, but this idea of whether you want to practice for pretend, because you know it's coming, or whether you have real opportunities coming up. Beth Jacob, myself, Kat Mavengere, the other Red Tree folks, we are here to help. So if you would like to, here's what we do with folks, identify an upcoming opportunity, connect with us, and this is all we need to know. What's the opportunity? Who do you need to reach? Let's make sure we're clear on those key messages. Get at least one of those message supports ready to play with, whether it's the social math soundbite or a story. Hopefully a story, seeing as that's what this project's all about. So maybe a yes and. What are some of the questions you anticipate? And we can literally get on the phone, get on a Zoom call and practice it, right? We can, and if you don't even have all these questions, we can talk them through with you to get there and then practice. So that is just an open offer to folks. We are here to help. Let's see what time, we got a time check. Yes, exactly. It's 1:42. Any last questions or comments before I give you back 18 minutes of your day? Okay, well, thank you all. I wanted to make sure I put up my email. I'm sure most of you have it, but just in case, there it is, lisa@redtreestrategy.com. For any follow-up questions, any comments, any support, please reach out, don't hesitate, and we will make sure to get you both this recording and the deck so that you can all use it if you want to share with others as well. With that, I will say good luck for the rest of the week. I wish you all grace and patience and whatever else you need. And thank you again for your time. Thanks, Jasmine. We can stop now.